Welcome to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, editor-in-chief of thenationalpulse.com. It's Monday. It's September the 21st, the year of our Lord 2020, and I'm broadcasting today live from New York City, which is a ghost town. I arrived last night in New York for this event that was taking place tonight at the New York Republican Women's Club, hosted by the New York Young Republicans. We're going to be talking about the steal, the coup, the plot against the president, or should I say one of the plots against this president. We'll be live there tonight. We'll be bringing you as much from that over the course of the next couple of hours here on Real America's Voice, tomorrow morning on The War Room, and on this show live from New York tomorrow as well. I want to say a very special thank you for the production team here in the New York studios for accommodating me at last minute's notice. There is an awful lot of information going on right now. Remember, we always talk about the signal versus the noise. Well, there is a lot of signal out there right now, whether it's Supreme Court picks and the whole fracas that's been taking place over the course of the weekend following the sad demise of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The woman who tried to mail rice into the White House has also been detained at the Canadian border. We'll talk to Jack Posobiec about that and his new movie, The Antifa, later on in the show. There are a lot of legal battles that the GOP is gearing up for right now, and about time too. It's only about 2 months since we first uncovered the plot, or again, I say the plot, a plot, another plot against this president. And it now looks like the GOP is specifically fundraising for those election day legal battles around the nation. And good thing, too, because there is lawfare going to happen as a result of the election on November the 3rd, and as a result of the found ballots that they will find in the days and weeks afterwards. Whether it's the stock market diving today, second waves of the coronavirus in Europe, this new police officer, this story of this police officer that's been arrested in New York, seemingly, allegedly collaborating with the Chinese Communist Party. There's just so much going on out there. But I do want to spend some time, before we get to Donald Trump Jr., who joins us in the next segment, I do want to give some time to Joe Biden. You see, Joe Biden was pretty robust and pretty clear, pretty honest, hard to mistake, back in 2016 about what the Constitution says should happen when there's a situation like this after the demise of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Let's roll this clip. I think we have it of Joe Biden talking back in 2016.
Whenever there is a vacancy in one of the courts created by the Constitution itself, the Supreme Court of the United States, the president shall, not may, the president shall appoint someone to fill the vacancy with the advice and consent of the United States Senate. And deciding in advance simply to turn your back before the president even names a nominee is not an option the Constitution leaves open. It's a plain abdication of the Senate's solemn constitutional duty. If the president consults and cooperates with the Senate, then his nominees may enjoy my support. I made it absolutely clear that I would go forward with the confirmation process as chairman, even a few months before a presidential election. And my consistent understanding of the Constitution has been the Senate must do so as well, period. They have an obligation to do so. The American people deserve a fully staffed Supreme Court of 9. The longer this high court vacancy remains unfilled, the more serious the problem we'll face. A problem compounded by turbulence, confusion, and uncertainty about our safety, our security, our liberty, our privacy, the future of our children and our grandchildren. We must not let justice be delayed or denied as a matter of fundamental rights. We must not let the rule of law collapse in our highest court because it's being denied its full complement of judges as a result of the Senate refusal to accept a presidential nominee. Obstructionism is dangerous and it is self-indulgent.
Do I need to say anything? that the situation is different today. And the situation was different then. The situation was very different then. You did not have the White House and the Senate controlled by the same party back then. That's the distinction, and it's a massive one. And Joe Biden says the Constitution's clear. Well, it's even more clear when you have a Senate supposedly, I say, controlled by the same party as the President of the United States. In that instance, there's no divergence, there's no lack of clarity. It's when you have a lame duck leaving office and a different party effectively in charge of the majority of the seats for the confirmation process. That's when the difference is. That's where the distinction was with Mitch McConnell and the Republicans back in 2016. So don't let anybody tell you that there's a rule set, the McConnell rule, set by McConnell back then. No. Different circumstance, different situation. We are entirely consistent here. And this president must get a nomination through. By the way, not on Friday, not on Saturday, today, right now, or tomorrow, since we're halfway through the day. But dragging this on any longer, I think, will only cause further problems for that whole process before this election. We're going to go to a quick break now. When we come back, Donald Trump Jr. joins us for a very special interview. I spoke to him earlier on today, so if you see me not wearing a tie, that's because it was about an hour ago. We'll be back with more National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam in just a second. Well, welcome back to the National Pulse. Earlier today, I spoke with the president's son, who's crisscrossing the country right now on behalf of his father. Donald Trump Jr. joins us in just a second for an exclusive interview here on the National Pulse, on Real America's Voice. And I want to ask you guys your feedback. I love this studio. I love the lighting in this studio. It looks slightly different. I'm thinking of taking up occupancy here in New York and wrestle this studio away from the Studio 6B guys here on Real America's Voice. Let me know what you think in the live chat over Twitter, on Parler, wherever you reach us. Let me know. Right now, I want to take you to Donald Trump Jr. Let's roll it. Joining me now is Donald Trump Jr., Vice President of the Trump Organization and one of the busiest men on the campaign trail right now. Don, we're so grateful for you joining us here on the National Pulse. I know you got a hard out, so keep it brief. Your new book is out now, Liberal Privilege. I want to give you a chance to promote that. What's in the book? Why should people be reading Liberal Privilege right now?
Well, honestly, Raheem, it's a book about everything that the media won't tell you about our opponent, Joe Biden. It was amazing. I had no intention of writing a second book, but during the lockdown, I had a 4-month period where I couldn't go to work, couldn't do anything, and I started doing some research, and I couldn't believe how much just totally disqualifying information there was about Joe Biden. And I was more shocked that there was not a single journalist in America willing to actually take that on and discuss it. I mean, these would be things that if Donald Trump did, if Donald Trump's family did, if Donald Trump had these in his medical records, these would be each individually national stories. It's a 360-page book with 600 citations, 18 chapters, each of them totally looked over by a mainstream media that is no longer journalists. They're purely activists for the far left. And so I really just took it upon myself. I self-published it to make sure that I had total control and that we could get all the information out there. So, this is the book for those who are perhaps on the fence, that are only believing or understanding what the media is telling them, most of which lies and or cover. And so it's for that person, as well as the people who are diehard MAGA, that want to be able to have that conversation with others who may not be as informed, because the media has, again, just absolved their role as journalists to be activists for the far left and not go into any of the details of Joe Biden's terrible policies, whether that be on trade, whether that be on race, the health issues, the family issues as it relates to graft, whether it's Hunter Biden or the brother and the housing contracts that, never being a home builder before to build in the Middle East. I mean, these are things that if we even looked at, it would be a total disaster, and yet it's as though they never even happened.
That's right, and you're out on the campaign trail. You're very visible. You're out there every day. You're doing events every day. I have a question. Where's Hunter?
Well, he's living large, I guess, because, taking $1.5 billion from the Chinese government into his, quote-unquote fund that no one had ever heard of before, that $30 million a year in fees on a typical fund model 2% structure, I guess it allows him to do whatever he wants. But imagine for 1 second that I took $1.5 from the Chinese government. What would happen? It would be hysterical. It would be hysteria, and he can do that. He can still be on the board of a Chinese company a year after he said he would get off. He can be sending American jobs out of Michigan and Wisconsin over to China on a board seat that he occupies today. This is going on as we speak, Raheem. He's still there sending American jobs to China, which has been Joe Biden's specialty for the last half a century. That's what Joe Biden did, whether it's support of TPP. Obviously, you have NAFTA, which was less about China, but still exporting the American dream to other countries. But most importantly, Joe Biden's push for China's status, permanent status on the World Trade Organization, which probably single-handedly did more destruction to American blue-collar jobs than anything in modern American history. And so, Joe Biden sort of gets the benefit of being able to campaign because the media will allow him to do this as the guy for blue-collar America when Joe Biden oversaw the destruction of blue-collar America for half a century. But now he's magically going to fix things. So, again, there's so much out there that I had to cover in this book. And again, it's just amazing that there's not a decent journalist left that would find any of these things interesting, that I had to do it myself.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. I commend it to everyone. Liberal privilege is out now. Just very quickly, Donald Trump Jr., before we let you go, I haven't been to New York in about a year, maybe even more. I arrived yesterday here. I mean, it's a total ghost town. You've got anti-de Blasio, anti-Cuomo graffiti going up. The city's cleaning it away as quickly as humanly possible. But it's sad to see what Midtown Manhattan. I mean, I've never been a Manhattan guy. It's just I'm a Londoner, so for me, there's that old rivalry between the city of London and the city of New York. But it's sad to me. The buildings are dark. There's ATVs going on down the streets. I mean, how do you feel as somebody who lived most of your life in New York to see it like this?
No, it's absolutely disgusting. I mean, between Cuomo and de Blasio, whether it be policy, whether it's been response to the looting and the rioting and the arson, whether it's the acceptance of these quote unquote not peaceful protests that when you're burning down a building, it's not exactly a peaceful protest, but obviously no one's going to talk about those things. But you could not come up with a better plan to destroy a city than what de Blasio and Cuomo have done in trying to, be shills for leftist America. What they've allowed to happen to that city in such a short period of time is truly disgusting. When we're there, you're right. It's a ghost town. Restaurants, 60% have been, they're probably shutting down. Most of them never coming back. They've done an incredible job sending people to Florida. That seems to be their specialty. They should get an MVP from Ron DeSantis down in Florida for the amount of people, hardworking people that are going to bring their businesses out of New York and there. So I don't foresee a quick recovery there. It's been so rapid and so drastic and so ridiculous. And then you see them justifying the policies after the fact. I can't even fathom it. As a lifetime New Yorker, it's absolutely disgusting. And it's one of those things. It's like, how much does that city even offer me at this point? As a conservative, I'm like, I pay a lot of taxes to live in a city that's, allowed crime to skyrocket, that's allowed vandalism to go unchecked, that's telling the police they shouldn't be prosecuting criminals. De Blasio, that was his thing prior to even COVID. Basically, you put hamstrings on the police officers, and then they're not allowed to arrest people for crimes. And he says crime's going down because prosecutions are down because they're not prosecuting people for things that were crimes 10 days before that. I mean, it's absolutely asinine. And again, it'd be nice if some of the people in the media in New York would call out the ridiculously of it all.
Well, with the New York-London rivalry in mind, I can volunteer that Sadiq Khan isn't doing London any better at the same time. I mean, it's almost like this is a sort of planned attack on these great cities in the Western world. Donald Trump Jr., just before I let you go, got to get your thoughts on the Supreme Court nomination. The Democrats are saying you shouldn't be doing it. President Trump doesn't have the authority. Your father doesn't have the authority to be doing this right now, this close to an election. Your thoughts?
Of course he does. This is Congress's job. If you look at Obama himself, if you look at Ginsburg or stuff, if you look at the people who all had quotes on this 4 years ago, when you had a White House that was controlled differently from a different party than the Senate, all of them said it's ridiculous. You must get it done now. You must do it right away. You must do it immediately. Now, all of a sudden, that tune has changed. So, of course, you get the typical partisan hackery immediately out of guys like Chuck Schumer, who, rather than even acknowledge the death of Supreme Court Justice Ginsburg, immediately went into political mode. But that's to be expected. The Democrats have been doing this, whether it's with the Russia hoax for the last 4 years. They'll turn anything political. They'll try to do anything. And they have a mainstream media that will carry their water. So I'm sure that message will get out there. But I'm literally looking at the video clips over the weekend of all of the people on the Democrat side saying exactly the opposite of their tune today. The difference being is that the White House is occupied by a Republican and the Senate is controlled by Republicans who have the absolute right to do this and should do it right now. They say elections have consequences, and this is one of them. This should get done.
Well, the book is Liberal Privilege. Donald Trump Jr., thank you so much for your time. I know the schedule's really busy. We're really grateful for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raheem. It's good talking to you.
We'll come back in just a moment. Jack Posobiec is making a new movie. You might know Jack Posobiec. He is just an incredible activist when it comes to Antifa, highlighting what Antifa is doing all across the country. We'll talk to Jack about his new documentary, Antifa, the Antifa, as he's calling it, in just a second. We'll be right back. I just want to make something very clear, that I don't take my tie off between segments. We actually pre-taped that interview about an hour ago with Donald Trump Jr., just because of his schedule being so crazy. So we rushed, Nick and I, from Midtown Manhattan out to the studio here in Long Island in a record-breaking, fully, obviously, legal speed limit and all of that, but in just record-breaking time to just about make it into studio to get that one segment in the can with Donald Trump Jr. Such is our commitment to you, our audience, and to the truth. And I want to say thank you to all the production team at Real America's Voice, and Nick, my driver / managing editor / sometime producer, for making that all work. While I just kind of sat pretty in the car and waited to arrive here in the studio, it was great to have Donald Trump Jr. on, and we were going to have him for longer and over Skype, but his schedule's just crazy right now. So what we will be doing is making sure that we try and get Donald Trump Jr. and a whole host of other great guests in the studio with us in Washington, D.C. over the next coming weeks. Very important developments going on here on Real America's Voice. You're going to want to pay very close attention to that. I want to thank and welcome the Comcast Chicago audience who's now tuning in to Real America's Voice as well, working on getting Real America's Voice all over the country, available everywhere for you guys. So stay tuned for all of that. My next guest now is a veteran, is a Catholic, is a father, is a reporter at One American News, and is a good friend of mine. He's also turned into a filmmaker. Jack Posobiec joins us for this segment and beyond. Jack, thank you so much for making the time today.
Hey, I appreciate being here. I appreciate you having me on. It's kind of amazing when you look at the amount of content that's out there today. And we're getting a steady stream of, constant tweets and constant social media updates. But it's so rare that we ever actually take time to sort of step back and talk about what it all means.
That's right. And there's just so much. A couple of months ago, there was so much noise out there. Now it seems like it's almost all signal. Whether it's the latest story about the NYPD officer and U.S. Army reservist who's been nabbed, effectively, allegedly, for working with the Chinese Communist Party. That's breaking news right now. We'll have more of that on the National Pulse later on today. Whether it's, Donald Trump Jr. talking about his book, Liberal Privilege, and what's in it about Hunter Biden, and why you see Don Jr. all over the campaign trail, but you don't see Hunter Biden over the campaign trail. That signal, the American public understands that there is a signal, clear signal there that Hunter Biden is doing when he's hiding away. It's Hayden Biden all over again, number 2, Hayden Biden Jr. Whether it's the debates coming up, Jack, there's just so much. Look, we've got about 3 more minutes in this segment because I'm just such a loudmouth and I don't stop talking. But in the last 3 minutes that we have in this segment, I want you to tell us, how do you differentiate, for the audience out there that wants to know how Jack Posobiec differentiates between the signal and the noise? Tell us.
Well, you know what I try to do is I look for trends. So I try to look for something that if it's an emerging trend or if it's a development in an older trend that has made it different, because we live in a time right now, certainly in this year 2020, where so many different things are happening on a daily basis that all seem unprecedented. How many times this year have we said, oh, that's never happened, or we never thought that could happen, and all of a sudden it does happen? And so while I look at that, I also try to distinguish between just how far things will develop. So we're seeing things now, for example, New York Times or the BLM website, the way that they're both going through and editing their past statements and then working in conjunction with fact checkers to essentially say, oh, we never said that. We never said that America was founded in 1619. Here it is on your website. Well, you go to the website and the website's been changed. It's been updated. It's been edited. You go to the BLM What We Believe site, and then the original link is dead. You can't go to get 404 hour. But then you go back and it says, well, we never said that we don't support or we support the breakup of the nuclear family. I said, but you had said that. We have it archived. And so the fact checkers will go in and if you post something up on Facebook, if you post something on Instagram, the fact checkers will hit you with that. Even if it was true in the past, now they're saying if it's not true in the present, and they control the present, it's very Orwellian, right? That it can be fact-checked and you can be taken down as saying false claims. And so yet we have a complete disintegration of how we are arbiting our truth. And this is a huge development for as we lurch really into these final stages of the election, where it's going to come down to, quite frankly, a situation where I think you're going to see both sides claiming victory, and we're not going to be able to agree on who is the eventual winner.
Yeah, Jack, I mean, I hate to use, as a big Orwell fan, I really do hate to use the phrase Orwellian, the term Orwellian, because it's just so openly used and so overly used. But, I mean, this is it. I mean, this is the memory hole, right? This is Winston Smith sitting at that cubicle, and he gets a little thing, and he puts the thing that the party wants taken away, and it goes off into the furnace, and it's never seen again, and the history is rewritten, and that whole thing that the 1619 Project originally said, no, we never said it. You can't prove it. Why? Because we've wiped the website, and we work with the fact checkers to rewrite history in real time. And soon they'll be going after the archive companies as well to say, oh, you cannot archive our stuff anymore. And then when we present them with hard archives that we've created ourselves, they're going to say, you've doctored that. That's not real. That never happened. Jack Posobiec, stick around. We've got another couple of segments with you. I want to get your thoughts on the Supreme Court nomination, the timeline for that, what the Democrats have said all along. This is the National Pulse, the signal, not the noise. We'll be right back. Also, the President of the United States said just after the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg that he was going to make a pick for the Supreme Court, and that it was and it is going to be a woman. Jack Posobiec joins us down the line now to analyze who the runners and riders are for that nomination and how it's going to go as far as Democrats are concerned, as far as Republicans are concerned, about those, and how about those middle of the road Mitt Romney types? Have they made their minds up yet? Jack, who are the top candidates for this coveted spot?
Well, so right now there's a situation sort of in the DC horse race, so to put it, of all those females candidates, those justices that were on the list released by President Trump just last week. And there is some indication that he released that short list because he did have some foreknowledge of what might happen with the situation on that seat. And so number one is, of course, Amy Coney Barrett. Amy Barrett has been a justice for about 4 years, almost 4 years now, from 2017 on. Then we've got Barbara Lagoa. She is a Cuban-American from Florida. She's been a judge all the way back to 2006, so a much longer period of rulings on her case. But Amy Coney Barrett, prior to this, was a professor. And being a professor, we actually get more of an insight into her view of the law because we've seen her opinions in terms of law review, where as opposed to simply her rulings, where we can only see her specific ideas on that one case or another. This is what we have from Barbara Lagoa. But I will say, though, that in Washington, D.C., there still hasn't been a final confirmation of who's going to get that. So I'm just checking my notes right now. So Lagoa is being pushed very hard by the Florida contingent. So DeSantis, Rubio, Rick Scott, they want a Florida pick. The electoral consequences of such are obvious, I think. The fact that she's Cuban-American, the fact that she's from Florida. Florida, of course, is the ultimate swing state. And really, we do have to start looking at this, and the White House has started to looking at this as this is almost like picking a de facto second running mate for President Trump, because this is someone who, while her name will not be physically on the ballot or mail-in ballot, depending on how we actually vote, it is sort of going to be there paired in the media along with Donald Trump throughout the rest of the election. And so that's something that's changing a little bit of the calculus for the White House as they go into this pick, wondering how will the choice of a new de facto running mate appear electorally on the ballot across the states, particularly those battleground states and the Rust Belt. So someone who's also being looked at is Judge Bridget Shelton Bade. She's on the appeals for the Ninth Court. Now, the only issue with her that people have said that she is quite strong on immigration. However, she is considerably older than Amy Coney Barrett. She is 54, whereas Amy Coney Barrett is young 40s. Another name that's been labeled or thrown around quite a bit is Judge Allison Rushing, Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. She is 38 years old, so would definitely be a lot younger, among the youngest justices up there. Not the youngest, but definitely the youngest since about the 19th century, were she to be chosen. She was someone who has done very well, and both Bade and Rushing sailed through in their nominations. Now, of course, Amy Coney Barrett had that contentious toss-up with Dianne Feinstein about her Catholicism. You know, are you an Orthodox Catholic? Do you ascribe to the dogma? Those sorts of questions. And so the question comes up, do you go with a high-profile pick, such as Amy Coney Barrett or Barbara Lagoa, or do you pick someone who's going to create less of a controversy, someone who may not be as high profile, to be that sort of de facto running mate as you go in looking at the electoral contest as it is? So there's a lot of questions involving this. However, one of the big ones that has already been decided, when you're hearing this from the president, we're hearing it also from Senate Majority Leader McConnell's office, is that this pick is going to be coming by the end of the week. They are waiting until after the funeral with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I think that's right. I think that's appropriate to make the nomination, to make the announcement. However, they are moving forward with this, and as the president has said, and Don Jr. just said on this program, they have the votes, and the Article 2 of the Constitution is clear on this question.
I think it's very clear on the question, and I think Joe Biden was very clear on the question. We played his comments back from 2016 at the beginning of this show. I don't think it's disputable, but Jack, my problem with waiting until the end of the week is that you allow for more confusion. You allow for more lobbying for different candidates. You allow certain people to become entrenched, maybe even hostile to each other throughout the whole process. You allow the left to get its situation together as far as it comes to pushing back against it. You allow the media to start driving wedges and start, putting out false narratives. Is it really uncouth to suggest who the nominee might be tomorrow and say, look, we don't expect them to vote on this before Ruth Bader Ginsburg's funeral is over, but certainly we have to get the ball rolling. We've only got 40-odd days until the election. The Constitution is clear that when there is a vacancy, it must be filled. And I think it was you, Jack Posobiec, who was one of the first people that said this, was you can't go into this election with a 4-4 situation on that Supreme Court. I mean, the lawfare that is going to be taking place as a result of the mail-in ballots, as a result of the coup, the cheat, the steal, the Transition Integrity Project, and all these other people that are going to come out and pour scorn over these election results when, guess what, Joe Biden gets blown out, at least in the Electoral College. You can't have a 4-on-4. So isn't expediting this thing the reasonable, the constitutional thing to do? We've got about 90 seconds.
Yeah, I think that's right. And of course, we know Donald Trump from his apprentice days loves to play the will he, won't he, who's going to get picked, who isn't card. So it wouldn't surprise me if he starts whittling down the short list, if they put out maybe just 3 names or just 2 names to even shorten the shorter list, the very short list here in the coming days.
Amy Coney Barrett's been vetted as well before, right? That expedites it.
Well, all of these justices have already been vetted by the Supreme Court. They've already been confirmed by the Senate. They've already been confirmed by the Senate. They've already gone through an extensive vetting process. And so there's even some discussion right now of potentially not even holding hearings and going straight to a vote on it.
Yeah, I think there's a very good case for that. All right, Jack Posobiec, when we return, I want to ask you about Lagoa, about Justice Lagoa, and what she might do on that court if she is the one, because there are a lot of quotes floating around about her attitude towards Roe v. Wade on the settled case of Roe v. Wade. And I want to bring that up with you. You're a Catholic, you're a man of God, you're a man who really truly believes in the pro-life cause. So I want to get into that. And also Jack Posobiec's new movie, which she debuted on social media this weekend. We'll be bringing you the trailer from that with more explanation from Jack Posobiec here on the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, and we'll be right back. Well, welcome back to the National Pulse. Jack Posobiec is our guest in this segment. I want to get into his movie, The Antifa, in just a moment, but I want to clarify something as well. Jack, Lagoa is one of these Supreme Court nominee picks. There's a lot of consternation out there about something that she has said about Roe v. Wade, and I want to make sure that we clarify it and are very just about the way that we go through this. So she was asked, do you agree that Roe v. Wade is I'm going to mess up this word, decisis, super precedent, right? Stare decisis. And the response came, Roe v. Wade is binding precedent of the Supreme Court, and I would faithfully follow it as I would follow all precedent of the Supreme Court, regardless of whether it is referred to as super stare or super precedent. Then asked, is it settled law? Her response is yes. For lower court judges, all Supreme Court precedent, including Roe v. Wade, is settled law. If confirmed, I would faithfully apply this precedent and other precedents of the Supreme Court. However, the counter-argument is what, Jack?
So the counter-argument, and it's really to contextualize it, is this was a question that she was being asked while she was in a confirmation hearing for a lower court. And because lower courts, there's this idea of a vertical hierarchy and vertical stare decisis. So essentially, because the Supreme Court has authority, has its precedent in terms of its previous decisions, would take hold over those lower courts. And so what she's saying is, as a member of this lower court, I of course will defer to the authority of the Supreme Court in a case that has already been decided, as much as possible, at least. That's what she's saying there. In fact, there's also another one of these that's going around on Amy Coney Barrett. People are bringing up this article that she co-authored while a student in law school regarding the death penalty as pertains to Catholics. And this was written back in the 1980s. And people were saying, oh, well, did she say that she has to recuse, or that all Catholic judges should recuse if there's a question of the death penalty? And if you actually read through the article, it's sort of a treatise, a commentary on the dual role of someone who is religious and someone who is also upholding the law. And what she says at the very end is, you should recuse as a judge if you are unable to uphold the law as is written and you can't put aside your moral judgment. She also then claimed in a confirmation hearing herself that no, she would not do that because she would always put the Constitution first.
Dr. does sound like maybe there do need to be some hearings on this to clarify some of these positions. I mean, I know we would like to expedite this, but I'm trying to be as fair as humanly possible here. There does seem to be some questions over this. I mean, would you say it's fair to say that Lagoa should have to clarify her position on Roe if she's going to be the nominee here?
Well, I think certainly for all pro-life voters, given the fact that we are going into a very contentious election, because of course it was Ruth Bader Ginsburg who was one of the fiercest defenders of abortion, Roe v. Wade, that this is definitely something that's going to be on the mind of a lot of Americans on both sides of the aisle that are going to want to know potential justice's opinion on Roe v. Wade. Was this something that was argued? And keep in mind that for a lot of the opponents of Roe v. Wade, it's not purely on moral or religious grounds. They actually point out that it is bad law that it was decided on. So this is something where even the more secular jurists in the legal profession have attacked Roe v. Wade as a decision because essentially that they read things into the Constitution, into the Fourth Amendment specifically, that are not clearly there in the text. And that's the extremely important reason when people say they are a textualist or an originalist. That's what they're talking about, the original intent, the meaning of the words behind them. So this is going to be a huge issue. And you're right, that is why the American people do deserve to have answers to these questions. And of course, from a political perspective, I'm sure the president, given the fact that Kamala Harris would be present in those hearings, they would certainly love to get her off the campaign trail and to bog her down in these hearings when she could be out there campaigning in swing states.
Do you agree, Jack Posobiec, that as far as it goes right now, the Supreme Court is in need of a staunchly social conservative voice? The previous picks that this president has made have more been along the lines of the deconstruction of the administrative state, not necessarily that hard-minded when it comes to social conservatism. Would you agree that this president should be using this pick to get more social conservatism on this court?
I mean, look, not every president gets the ability to have 3 Supreme Court picks, certainly not in only one 4-year term. This is quite unprecedented. And so for the president, he's made his picks through the Federalist Society. He's made his picks for the legal profession. He's attacked the administrative state. Now it's time, especially at election time, to look towards those social conservatives. He has that opportunity for his base. And of course, as a member myself of the pro-life movement, President Trump is the first president to physically attend and speak at the March for Life that happened earlier this year. When he went there, I remember going out in like the early 2000s, and we would talk about, oh, maybe we'll get the vice president to call it or something, like that was a big deal. President Trump actually came out there and said that he would fight for the pro-life movement. I think it's time that he backs that up, and certainly would urge him to back that up in terms of his social contract with his voters. I don't think anyone's ever accused Donald Trump of being a huge social conservative, but there is a reason that so many social conservatives, evangelicals, Catholics have decided to vote for him, and this is top of that list.
Do you think it might actually do him some damage with more socially conservative-minded, more religious right types ahead of the election if he's seen to choose somebody that doesn't represent their social conservatism?
Well, that's right. I mean, we're certainly not looking at a pick here where there's anyone else on the Supreme Court who looks like they're going to be leaving anytime soon. And so for social conservatives that are yearning for that champion of theirs in terms of their reading of the law, their view of the laws of this land, their view of the Constitution, they've been so used to being relegated to the back of the bus in terms of the Republican Party and in terms of the conservative movement. Donald Trump, when he campaigned and when he went to that March for Life, I was out there with him in Washington, D.C. at the National Mall, he said that he would fight for those conservatives and he would fight for their issues. This is the number one issue of that movement, period. And I think there's people who see
Jack,
sort of
we have to go to a quick break here. We're going to go to a quick break here. Jack Posobiec, stick with us. When we come back, I want to show you all Jack Posobiec's new movie trailer and get some more info out of him on The Antifa, the new movie from Jack Posobiec and the team. This is the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam. If you like us, Go support us at fundrealnews.com. In the break, we'll be right back. More memory holing going on right now. The Transition Integrity Project's website went from down, 404 error, we're trying to get things back up, to just totally erased from existence, as they said in Back to the Future. All right, our guest is Jack Posobiec, but before we go back to Jack, I want to go to the teaser trailer for his movie about the Antifa. Let's roll it.
So if Trump gets reelected, what?
Cities burn.
Times to be organized and orchestrated chaos.
They call everybody they disagree with Nazis.
I felt like I had no choice but to do what I did.
So yeah, kill them. Kill the Nazis.
Long live the socialist revolution.
When conditions become right, people do get the opportunity to change the whole system through a revolutionary struggle.
The International Revolutionary People's Guerrilla Forces work to defend social revolution around the world.
We gotta fight it out. We're gonna remake this country in the street.
Liberals get the f***ing wall first.
What's happening, and it seems like day after day all of this is just going on, it's constantly happening, but we never sit back, we never take a step back and figure out why is this happening? Is this brand new? Has this ever happened before? Well, yes, actually it has. It's happened before. It's happened all around the world, and this is part of a long movement that, and by the way, this isn't something that I'm saying. I'm not putting words into their mouths. You watch that trailer, that I'm not speaking in it at all. I didn't even add any words to it. It's all their words, their actions, their history, the history of anarcho-communism going all the way back to the 1930s. We talk about the anarcho-socialism even in the early 1900s. The fact that a president of the United States was killed by an anarcho-socialist in 1901, William McKinley. We don't even talk about this stuff anymore because we're doing the work essentially that public schools haven't done to explain this movement, the work that the media should be doing to explain this movement, explain where they come from, the dark nihilistic forces that they've wrought up, that have been wrought up by other totalitarians and demagogues around the world, and to talk about what it means for our society, because this is the same thing that they have done to other societies around the world.
Do you think, I mean, in the midst of making this, Jack, and researching everything that you know about Antifa, its roots, all of that, I mean, are we just repeating the last century's mistakes here as it pertains at least to communism and the far left? The whole idea, the romanticization of the political left against the Nazis in the last century was totally ignorant of the fact that communism was as evil, if not more evil, than fascism as an ideology. It has certainly killed more people around the world. Are we just on repeat here?
Well, you had this interesting situation, right, where in 2016, 2015, when Donald Trump ran for office, then what did the media say first thing? They said, this is Hitler. This will be the rise of a new Hitler. And to a lot of people who believed the media, who were inspired by them, they saw any Trump supporter who put on one of those red MAGA hats, they saw everyone in those rallies, they actually believed the things that CNN, the New York Times were telling them. And so it's driven them further and further extreme. They're out on that edge, that thin edge, and their numbers are now growing because they are fed a constant stream of so-called outrages on a daily basis, and they're told that the only way to deal with it is through violence because they lose at the ballot box, they lose through voting. And by the way, this is a group of people that isn't going to go anywhere because of the outcome of this election, one way or the other. They don't believe in elections, and this is something that we get into in the film. Of course, I want everyone to watch it. It's going to come out in October, but it's something that we get into is that they have moved beyond the normal political process. They're not Democrats, they're not Republicans, they're just as anti-Democrat as they are anti-Republican. They want a complete radical overthrow of the system, and they've been told again and again that the way to do that is through essentially destruction, is through violent ends. And what's really telling is that the Democrat Party refuses to denounce them. Just say the name. Nancy Pelosi will say, well, I'm against violence. Well, I'm against anyone being hurt. But just say the name. Why can't you just say Antifa? I'm against this group specifically. And the fact that they won't do that really speaks volumes.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Jack, tell our audience, where can they follow along to make sure that they get Antifa, the Antifa and its history of violence, your movie, when it comes out?
Yeah, just follow me along on Twitter at Jack Posobiec, JCKPOSIBIEC. You'll find it all there. I'm also on Parler, Instagram, OANN. Everything that you can do to find us is where it's going to be. It's going to be launched as soon as we possibly can. And we're going to make sure that this goes live prior to the election so people know exactly what's at stake.
Well, Jack Posobiec, thank you once again for joining us here on the National Pulse today. We're greatly appreciative for it. And I just, I don't know how you get the time to do all of this stuff between raising your family. You also got those great traditional Instagram pictures. Looks like just such a great family and a great situation you have. But you're always busy as well, doing something, moving the ball forward. Action, action, action. Jack Posobiec, thank you once again.
Thanks so much, Raheem. Appreciate it, man.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our show today, but stick around. Real America's Voice has a whole lot more for you this evening. We'll be bringing you coverage from the New York Republicans Club as well. Don't miss tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. on the War Room, and here, 3 p.m. live from New York on the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam. Make sure you head on over in the next few minutes. We're getting more stories up on thenationalpulse.com, and if you want to support our work, go to fundrealnews.com. In the meantime, I'm Raheem Kassam. We'll see you tomorrow.